Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative. If you're interested in seeing how you can be a hero to those creators in need, go to theheroinitiative.org for more information. Welcome, everyone, to Modern Men. It's Monday, man. We're so excited to be here. We got a big show planned for all of you guys. But first, I want to get into the panel here. My name's CWood. Next to me over right there, we got ComicManAndy. Andy, how's the beard this Monday?
It is perfect.
Wow.
It has eclipsed the non-bearded state and has returned to the forever bearded state.
Man, it only took several months, but I think we finally got a Jim Mint Andy beard shaved off for charity. It is finally back to its majestic, fine mane that is Andy's beard. So happy to have you. And right down in the basement down there, we got DruManchu, baby.
I just trimmed myself up today, man. You know, and you know, I kind of keep it clean. I can't be like Andy and go full baby's butt, but you know, you got to do it so every once in a while. Keep it short. Keep it all taken care of. Man, all I know is I have no beard. So what can you do when you don't have a beard? You can go to the chat. So we got to go to that chat right now, guys. We had a lot of people just hopping in and out throughout the day into this chat, but we've got Metarog saying, congratulations on 1K, guys. So well deserved. The content you provide is something for everybody. So big, huge shout out to Metarog. He also crossed 1K today. More on that in a couple minutes here. But I want to get back into the chat first. We got Ricky Markstadt. How you doing, Ricky? Nice seeing you. I know he was commenting like yesterday on this show. So big shout out to Ricky. I know he's been looking forward to Modern Men at least for 24 hours. And we got Darth Bane. How you doing, Darth Bane? He says congrats on 1K. John's Comics with Kids. There's another one of today's 1K club. He says congrats to the core, specifically Chad, who is the man and mind and heart behind this whole endeavor. Yeah, to say the very least, big, huge, gigantic shout to Chad. Without none of this would be possible without Chad. I think we can all agree and say that. We got Downright Nerdy Podcast is in the chat saying 1,000. Congratulations once again. Big, huge shout out to DNP. We love seeing him. Definitely check out Downright Nerdy Podcast channel. He interviewed Comic Core Chat actually yesterday, and definitely check out that interview. It was awesome. Let's see who else we got here. Oh, I'm afraid we've got some bad news. Chris Barrett, he is in the chat. He says he finished Jedi school. He is officially a Padawan, I suppose, now. There you go. We got Dollar Bin Fodder going, yo, what's going on, Dollar Bin Fodder? How are you doing tonight? Big shout out to Bob World. He's in the chat. He's responsible for the awesome intro we had at the top of the show. And one of the guys we're going to talk about early on tonight. We got Comics with Bueller's in the chat saying congrats to Comic Core, which leads me into, I guess the 85, 90 elephants in the room, so to speak. So big, huge shout out goes to Comics Bueller and some other people actually that took the time, made a video and shouted out the Comic Core, doing their darndest to make sure we hit 1,000 today. So I know Bueller, he made a video, I think it was yesterday. He was putting stuff on social media today, trying to get us that extra bump. So big, huge shout out to Bueller. He's basically been with the Comic Core since day one. He used to be on our Friday show. So definitely huge shout out to Comics with Bueller. Also, Ben from CBSI, he shouted us out last week, or not last week, like literally yesterday. Shout out Modern Men and Golden Guys. Metarog and the No Faces chat, they shouted us out earlier tonight. One of my other favorite huge Monday shows is going on now, No Faces chat with him, Bubs Comics and DS. So definitely an awesome show there. We had Downright Nerdy Podcast, like I said, he interviewed Chad yesterday, plugging the Comic Core, and John's Comics with Kids. He was copying, pasting links all day. I saw him in the No Faces chat as well. So big thanks to everybody, but especially huge thank you to all the new subscribers, all the old subscribers, just in general.
thank you, everybody. Drew, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just say that we've come a very, very long way in a very short time. A lot about what we began as has changed, and that's awesome. You notice we got a real nice, good shout out in the chat. I can't remember who said it now. That says Comic Core has something for everybody, and that's kind of the way we design the channel. We want to make sure that we have a different style of programming to offer just about everybody. And if you guys want to be a part of the Comic Core, man, all it takes is a quick shout, email, a quick direct message via any one of our social media accounts. Get in touch with us. We'd like to collab with just about everybody. This all started with Trinity Comics. I want to shout him out. Trinity Entertainment. He doesn't really do content anymore, but Jeremy, a lot of you guys know Jeremy. He was part of the Blaster Stash It crew. He decided to start his own thing. It started with something about Unite the Seven. You remember that, CWood?
Oh, yeah, man, I've been there since day one-ish, man. Yeah,
and it used to be on another channel.
When it's misspelled, review some Batcave, man. That's been day one on that stuff.
It's kind of a strange thought to know that now we go to conventions together as a team. We have just about daily chats with each other off air as well as on, and this family has continued to grow, and I couldn't be happy about our current partnership with the Hero Initiative, and I think that this is going to allow us to do a whole lot more for them, and onward and upward, man. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to start shouting out a list of 1,000 people starting right now with, no, I'm not going to do that.
And then Comics with Bueller in chat does say he had this feature video that it had ourselves, the Comic Core, of course, Metarog, and John's Comics with Kids. We all went over 1,000, but there's one more on that list that's very close, and that's Al Red Sox fan. So definitely sub up Al Red Sox fan. Let's give him that Bueller bump. Maybe, we can give him 1 or 2 subscribers and call it the Comic Core bump or something like that, or the Comic Core curse or something crazy. We'll curse you with 1 or 2 extra subscribers. But yeah, definitely check out Al Red Sox fan. He's got some cool stuff going on his channel. And then there's a couple more shout outs in the chat I got to do, but I love doing this next guy. He goes, YouTube is 90. Drink it in, man.
Must be nice to be 90. YouTube may be 90, but Comic Core is 1,000, my friend.
Hey-o. We got William Bird, Justice for Comics, Doomsday Comics. How's everybody doing? So without further ado, hey, we got a Modern Men show to go here. So if you guys missed it last week, the randomizer winner was one of my all-time favorites. One I have been plugging and trying to get read on this channel for a minute. Daredevil Born Again. So this is Frank Miller and Mazzucchelli on the art. Maybe my favorite Marvel story. I gotta say, I'm trying to think of one I would probably put above this. Maybe some of the X-Men stuff with the Grant Morrison run. I know, Drew, you and I were talking about that the other day. I'm reading
that right now, man.
The X-Men, any of the Jim Lee X-Men, but I'm just trying to think, I think this is my favorite Marvel read. So, Andy, we'll start with you. What were your initial impressions of Daredevil Born Again?
Guys, my head is still spinning with the activities today. Man, and where do I begin? What does it mean to hit 1,000 subs? Really quick, before we roll further into the show, for everybody in the chat and everybody looking, that means the monetization of this channel goes to the Hero Initiative.
Right.
Super chats. That means the advertisements. When you guys donate to the Comic Core, it is going to the Hero Initiative. That's, a key thing to remember, guys. But Daredevil Born Again, I'm in love. This is really like the quintessential Marvel read for any collector out there. It's a time capsule too. It brings you right back into the 80s with some of that dialogue. And when you look at the characters with the issues and the struggles that they're having are very relatable, whether it's physical abuse or drug abuse or depression or anxiety. Those are very real human feelings and things that the characters go through, and it's very relatable. And the story brings you right in, and Frank Miller does an amazing job building those characters and building that world. And I could go on for another hour, but I'll stop it right there for a moment.
All right, Drew, you're the Marvel guy of the Comic Corps. What are your impressions of Daredevil Born Again?
Yeah, I thought that I really loved this story, and upon revisiting it, I don't like it nearly as much as I thought I did initially. It's not that there's anything wrong with it per se. I just think it's definitely aged. I think it's from a different era of storytelling, and I'm so used to reading modern reads that Daredevil Born Again is kind of right on the verge of that modern read. It's kind of one of the first things that kind of led into the modern era, is this Frank Miller style of storytelling. And, it's not that it's bad in any way. I still think it's really a top tier story. I just, I remember it much more fondly than I do going back and actually delving into it.
Fair enough. I kind of, for some reason, I was like, DruManchu, he's going to say, it's not as good as you remember. I don't know why. I just had a feeling you were going to say
I don't know. You got me pegged, man. That's what it is.
But I guess I'll go into my initial impressions. Like when I was telling the fellas before we got live, when I read this, I wasn't super familiar with a lot of the Marvel stuff besides like maybe Spider-Man and X-Men. I was mainly DC. I was in college. I just got back into comics following probably Grant Morrison's new X-Men around that time, Mark Waid's Fantastic Four, and so on and so forth. And then I wandered into, I think it was either Borders or Barnes & Noble, gone too soon. And I just saw this hardcover sitting on the shelf, decided to give it a try because I like Dark Knight Returns so much, and I've heard nothing but great things about, Daredevil from Frank Miller. And I read this, and I think I immediately went back and read it again. I liked it so much. So it really opened me up to like wanting to explore Daredevil after I think I ended up reading the Kevin Smith run, a little bit of the Bendis run, the Brubaker run, and going into the Mark Waid run. I think Daredevil is one of those characters who has this rich history at Marvel that is, for whatever reason, a little bit underappreciated maybe. When we think Marvel, we still think, once again, Spider-Man, X-Men, Avengers. I think Daredevil, for me, deserves to be right up there with, especially since he has so many consistent writers and great storylines. But for me, Born Again it's like up there in terms of quality of storytelling. I think this is a good predecessor to what we interpret as the modern age of reads. Without Frank Miller, you probably don't have the style of storytelling we have now. But I'll let Andy go again because I know I'm rambling on too much. So, Andy, what'd you think of some of the supporting cast in this book? Like, what'd you think of Karen Page right off the bat?
Wow. So, how do you even sum this up and put it into words? You guys got to read it for yourself. She is down in the dumps and trying to claw her way back and using whatever means necessary. And she does. She drops that last little tidbit that might get her that fix. And then she realizes that she needs to come running back there to get saved. And I was kind of surprised of how realistic like situations like that are. I mean, he really drew from culture on that one. That's kind of, I've had friends and seen people do things like that before, and I was kind of taken aback by it. And the cast is really well done, in my opinion, without spending a lot of time and a lot of effort into going too deep. There's enough there to build the cast without detracting from the main story and the main characters.
No, absolutely. Drew, what about you? Did you have a favorite character in this one?
I like Nuke. I'm a big Nuke fan.
Nice.
But yeah, Karen Page, her character arc in this is just like it's terrible what happens to her, and it's terrible she puts everybody else in just because she couldn't make it in Hollywood. She just couldn't hack it. That Karen Page. But yeah, I think Kingpin is great in this book. I love Matt in this book as well, as Foggy has a lot to do in this book as well. Mm-hmm. Get some Cap in there. There's a lot of really great stuff in this book. There's a lot of really great imagery as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to talk about Karen Page specifically because she's kind of like, I don't know how to put it in the words, but
she's the catalyst for the whole
deal.
Yeah,
the catalyst. Yeah, you see her. I mean, she, like, if she could be at a lower point, I would want to see it. Like, when this book begins, she is at such a low point. Like, she is trading superhero identities for one fix of drugs. And of course, that gets the Kingpin, and that's where the whole story really goes off the rails for Matt Murdock. But I think the most touching part of this whole story, which I think, of course, I didn't pick that panel for whatever reason, I don't know. But there's a panel in here where she's trying to find Matt Murdock for pretty much the whole time. And because she knows it's the only person in the world who may care enough to actually try to protect her. Meanwhile, Matt Murdock should be furious at her because she's the one who sold him out. But when they finally unite, when everything comes to like the lowest point for both of them, Matt Murdock has nothing. He doesn't have a Daredevil costume. Karen Page, she has no one else in the world. She's all drugged up. She's really unhealthy. Matt Murdock sees her. They hug. They both cry. And then on the next, I think I say next page, but I think in reality it's the next issue. She's basically tells Matt what happens, and Matt's like, I haven't lost anything because of you. And there's this really touching moment where they get back together. And at the end of the day, Matt blames Karen for nothing. He knows it was Kingpin's fault. Like on one of our panels of the week here, let me go ahead and pick it right here where the building explodes. And that's where Kingpin put his signature on that dotted line saying, I'm going to screw Matt Murdock. I know he's Daredevil, and I'm going to ruin his life slowly and extremely pleasurable to him. So what'd you think about this panel, Andy? I know this was one of your picks.
I loved it. I mean, look at those 80s aviator glasses style and the whole scene's being reflected. So you're essentially, he's trying to illustrate it or make it look like you're seeing it through his eyes. His entire home, everything he's known and not seen is gone. Just gone.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad enough for him at this point just because, you know, he lost his girl. Foggy took his girl of all people, Foggy Nelson. So he was already down in the dumps for that. And then the identity got released. And then he, you know, the IRS, you know, he got frauded by them, by Kingpin, and he got disbarred, and he got all of his credit cards froze, and he's getting really paranoid. He even started blaming Foggy a little bit, didn't know who was in on what. And then this building explodes, and he's like, Kingpin.
Well, at one point, he's blaming everything in his surroundings. Anything that happens, he's looking for that enemy to blame, whether it's Foggy or the person next to him, or he's instantly second guessing everything around him.
All right, my next panel, I picked this one. I had to pick J. Jonah Jameson. His appearances in this were limited, but I think overall the emphasis on the Daily Bugle was very important in this.
Yeah, I love the character of Ben Urich. I think that that's a character that was greatly used in the television series, but kind of had a limited window of opportunity to be showcased. I love Ben Urich as a character in this story. And J. Jonah Jameson says it right here. 5 million readers worth of power. The paper, the media can depose mayors and it can destroy presidents. It's the kind of thing, that's the weapon you need to use to take down the Kingpin. He knows it. The guy's got to be tried in the court of public opinion. This was a run at cancel culture before it became a thing. The Daily Bugle had the power to bring down the Kingpin when Daredevil did not.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I had to. I just love that lighting by Mazzucchelli too. It just makes, like, during this scene, basically, there's this whole part where Ben Urich is on the phone with this officer who basically was asked to frame Matt Murdock, and he's ready to come clean because he was attacked by the Kingpin. Basically, Kingpin is doing a complete cleanup job, Goodfellas, Godfather style, trying to cover everything up. And he's on the phone, and he gets to hear the guy who's ratting out Kingpin getting killed by this like roided up nurse being strangled to death, saying, my employer doesn't want you to talk, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, Jay Jonah's in this light looking, you know, all sinister. He's just like, we're asking you to do this because, you know, you have 5 million readers worth of power behind it. So it may be, you know, worth your life, but 5 million people are going to find out the truth about Kingpin. So I thought that was an extremely powerful part. But speaking of Kingpin, I don't know, I had to pick this one here. Yep. Kingpin fighting ninjas in his red tighty whities. So I just flipped to that page and it made me laugh. So I had to highlight that one. And my last panel of the week was Daredevil finally putting the news story literally on Ben Urich's desk. when he just, Nuke gets that butt kicked, and now he's literally pouring rain soaked on his desk. So that's the final one I picked for this. And everyone is covering up Drew, so we'll uncover Drew there.
It's cool. We're looking at some beautiful panels. And I think that what I really loved about this, the art in this book, a lot of it comes down to the coloring. If you go back to that explosion panel, the pinks and the orange, like juxtaposed with the blue of its figure there in the shadow, that's being cast by this giant explosion. That's really great right there. Awesome stuff. The colors just really jump off the page. And I love the way that it looks digitally as well, which is the way I read it, which I did read it panel by panel. It gave me more of an appreciation of the panels. And I think it kind of maybe took away from the pages, because I do read that panel by panel when I read digitally. So that might have been part of why I didn't enjoy it the same way I did before. But man, the art has such great colors, great composition, really well put together in this book.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So I guess it's about that time. Should we give this our grade, our CGC style grade? Andy, we'll start with you, bud.
I'm going 9.6, man.
Nice.
9.6, solid 9.6. And the only reason why it's not a 9.8 for me is because I didn't really have a long history with this book or series. I didn't grow up with it, so to speak.
Okay, so 9.6. So Drew, what about you?
I'm kind of torn in a lot of ways. I'm going to give it a 9.8 because of how much I've enjoyed it over the years, time and time again. But I'm going to slap that green label on it because there was some restoration, and I just see it a little bit differently than I did in years past. So we'll go with the 9.8 green label.
You place that staple. All right.
Yeah, it might have been a play. Yeah, the Mark Jeweler insert's not in there.
Oh man,
the value. It's missing the value stamp.
Dang it, those jerks cut it out.
Does not affect story.
I was trying to think of what grade I would give this, and I was just like, do I go perfect? But I think I'm gonna have to go 9.9.
Wow.
Almost there. I think I'm saving my 10 Gem Mint grade for a DC book just for you, Drew. But I'm going to go 9.9 on this.
You're going to waste it to try to raise the aggregated score or something?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for me, this is like my first and my favorite Daredevil read. This led me to reading a whole bunch of Daredevil after that. I can easily see this influence in the Daredevil series, especially season 3. Especially the whole side story where he gets to meet his supposed mother and the nun. There's that whole storyline, and the whole storyline where they make Melvin Potter make the suit for a fake Daredevil to frame him up, and then Daredevil gets to fight the fake Daredevil, and that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think this deserves to be up there with Dark Knight, and maybe I don't know if it deserves to be up there with the Watchmen. That's pretty close because that's a sacred read right there in terms of graphic novels, but. This is one of my all-time favorites, to say the least.
Well, an interesting point to make with this series is that they specifically depicted Hell's Kitchen more from a rooftop aspect, because it delivered more of a gritty, different aspect than what a lot of people at the time were considering like Spider-Man's, like the view that they were seeing in the Spider-Man books in the 80s. This was a really big departure. A lot of pipes, a lot of water towers, a lot of rooftop scenes.
Stark contrast.
Exactly, yeah.
No, I never really thought of that. Usually there's a lot more like sky blues and that type of stuff in Spider-Man. You get to see those skyscrapers all lit up and the night scenes, and it's usually very beautiful backgrounds. Here, I mean, you can definitely tell, especially later on if you read Batman Year One, which depicts obviously Gotham City as another gritty playground for all these crazy maniacs. They get down and gritty in this. So Hell's Kitchen is a gritty place to live. I mean, it is definitely not drawing this big limelight at all. It's a character unto itself.
Yeah, they really break him down into the point where he is sleeping in the alley with bums, and to climb his way back, he starts off as basically a line cook, a kitchen cook at a greasy spoon in Hell's Kitchen, which is just an amazing depiction.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So before we move on to our main topic of the night, once again, I want to remind everyone tonight's episode is powered by the Hero Initiative. Definitely check out heroinitiative.org to see how you can contribute to the Hero Initiative. It's a very important cause. And once we get that monetization going on this channel, those super chats are going to go directly to the Hero Initiative. So can't wait to help them out in even another capacity. But also, this is the time I like to go to that chat. We got Longbox Diving in the chat. How you doing, Longbox Diving? He's asking, is that Born Again?
Oh, it was.
And if you guys enjoyed our review of this, stay tuned to the end of the show, and we're going to let you guys suggest next week's read. So usually what we do for those first-time watchers, we get picks from the chat. We do some of the picks of our own. We jumble that up. We throw them all in a randomizer. And then whatever wins that randomizer, that's what we're going to be reviewing next week. So last week, Daredevil Born Again won that randomizer. So if there's a read you guys want to see us review, stay tuned to the end of the show. Put that read in the chat. We'll put it in the randomizer, and we'll get going from there. And hopefully next week we may be reading a suggestion from you. All right, we got Ricky Markstadt. He's saying Immortal Hulk Great Power #1 is coming out next week.
I'll be reading that one.
Downright Nerdy Podcast, TMP says 9.9. I'm putting that on my, oh yeah. If this isn't on your read list, man, add it to your read list.
It's a must read for sure.
Can't recommend it enough. I think
I'm going to tell you what, every book we've done so far has been a must read, and every book that we put in that randomizer is a must read. So it really never can go wrong. Perfect formula for this show. I tell you what, guys. I tell you what, it's my favorite show.
We'll never disappoint.
Except for allegedly Red Goblin and Justice League. But hey, those were good.
Hey, they were still fun.
Yeah. We got JLS Comics saying, what up, guys? How you doing, JLS? Another great channel right there. Definitely sub him up, even though probably everyone here already is. We got Stay Puff 1983. How you doing, man? I always like seeing Stay Puff in the chats. And, of course, Chris Barrett, he loves him some of that nuke. So tonight's topic, I figured since we're talking about Daredevil Born Again, why don't we just go ahead, kind of stay on the topic. We're going to talk about some Frank Miller tonight. Just, we've kind of thought about on this series, talking a little bit about creator spotlights and that stuff. And, I was just like, why not just do a creator spotlight? And while we're talking about Daredevil, we may as well just start with Frank Miller. I think it's a creator most everyone here is familiar with previously, so there's not tons of research to do prior. So I figured, why not go ahead and try this out, and we'll see what happens. So I figured instead of going through a whole career retrospective, and we looked at a few lists on our Modern Men private chat, but I figured the best way to start this is just like, what does Frank Miller and his work mean to you guys? Like, what were some of your do you guys remember the first Frank Miller comic you read and really enjoyed? Like, Andy, I'll go ahead and start with you.
I didn't really know of Frank Miller until my time in the military in the Marine Corps. Now, I was way late and behind the curve on a lot of this stuff, but Frank Miller's 300 is utilized, clips and the movie is utilized in Marine Corps training. Whether it's to provide a lot of motivation or to see the ways teams work together to some point, it's utilized. And it's very inspiring. And after that, that was an eye-opener for me. So I started really diving in from that point.
Nice. Drew, what about you?
Frank Miller is a little bit interesting for me because I read Frank Miller's Daredevil when I was younger, when I was a kid. Read a lot of that stuff. And I didn't know it was Frank Miller until Sin City comes out and I start realizing that, oh, this guy has done a lot of other things. So my first real experience with Frank Miller, where I knew I was thinking about Frank Miller and looking at Frank Miller's work, might have been a Sin City special edition DVD commentary track, or, one of those special features where they go into how he crafted his comics. I love Sin City. I love The Yellow Bastard. I love A Dame to Kill For still. I really enjoy a lot of what Frank Miller has done. He's had his ups and his downs, but I think you can't take his name out of consideration when you talk about architects of the modern comic book.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that statement more. Architects of the modern comic book. So I guess my experience is growing up as a little kid reading Wizard magazine. I remember reading that Wizard magazine, and I'd always go to the back section to see like, oh, are my Superboys worth anything this week? Of course they weren't, and they never will be. But that's fine because it's one of my favorite books. But nonetheless, I'd always see like they'd always have like this character died in this issue worth $2 or what have you, and I always thought this one was interesting. It said Death of the Joker, like $10 or whatever. I'm like, when did Joker die? I didn't hear about this. And it was in, obviously this series of books, The Dark Knight Returns. So of course, like me and my brother started talking like, hey, there's actually a book out there with an older Batman. You get to see him, come back out of retirement and this stuff. That sounds like nuts. So we decided to seek it. We got some beater copies off of eBay, which actually I think they're the same copies hanging on my wall back there. And, when I read that the first time, I read it, all 4 of them in one sitting as like maybe an 11 or 12-year-old. And I enjoyed every second of it. So yeah, that was my first experience with Batman, his Batman run. And then eventually I got into reading the Dark Knight 2, or what is it? Dark Knight Returns to DKR2. I don't remember what the tagline of it, but I just remember like I had like such a high coming out of this, and it was around a couple years later, like, oh cool, they're making a sequel to it. And I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed in that sequel and the follow-up, but man, I guess I want to focus on the positives here. Dark Knight Returns for me, I mentioned Daredevil Born Again almost being up there with Watchmen. I think when you're talking essential reads, especially, architectural reads of the modern era, you can't not talk about Dark Knight Returns.
He gives this a 9.9 and says it's almost up there with Watchmen.
Yeah, I think there's 2 reads, and this is probably one of them.
Look, I think that say what you will about DK2, right? And say what you will about Azarello kind of taking over on DK3, but that's a universe that I enjoy. I enjoy seeing the way that universe has evolved and grown. And Miller's one shots and those like ash cans in the DK3 books, he did those all by himself. The Green Lantern books, those tertiary characters that weren't really involved in the story so much, but were integral parts of the DC universe. And that's my favorite part of DC, is when you get really great continuity and connective tissue in an Elseworlds kind of tale. And he did a great job with that. That's kind of the last thing that I really remember enjoying that Frank Miller did kind of solo. And the art is kind of all over the place, but still has a really kinetic and energetic feel that nobody else really has the ability to capture. And you're talking about a guy like Frank Miller, who gave us Sin City and also 300, which is like, man, if this guy didn't make a bunch of directors' careers, come on. Just a fantastic storyteller in his own right, but gave a lot of inspiration to other people. And I don't know if Zack Snyder gets his hands on Watchmen without doing 300 first. I don't think he gets his hands on the DC universe without doing 300 first. You say what you will about it, but it might not have been what we all wanted, but it made a butt ton of money for Warner Brothers.
And William brings up a great point here. The Wolverine Limited series. I think that doesn't come up often enough because Frank only did the inks, the pencils. He did the art on that, but he didn't write it.
Right. And Rubenstein did the cover on that.
Yeah, Joseph Rubenstein. That's probably like his most iconic cover. But I was going to ask like what you guys thought of Frank Miller as an artist, because his most popular anything he's done is mainly because of the way he writes. So what do you guys think of the way he draws?
I think it's very unique. Mm-hmm. I think that, say what you will about him kind of being sloppy and not as clean as other artists are. But you don't get a guy like Frank Miller, then you don't get a guy like Bill Sienkiewicz, right? He's kind of got this style all his own that you can't really put a finger on. And I think that he does a lot of really great layouts in his writing as well. He's directing the story as he writes it.
Yep.
So you can't discount his artistic vision, his visual artistic vision, when he's not actually drawing the pencils on anything. I think that all of his books have a very specific feel. I think that when you look at something like Ronin, that's something that you really get a lot of what he can do in that book. And even like I said, those little ashcan one shots inside the DK3, man, that's stuff that like it really has its own life to it. You can't really compare it to anything else, to be honest.
It's got that great dark noir feel to it. But what I really loved about his work is, I think it was his first wife did a lot of his inking and coloring in the late 80s, 90s into the early 2000s during their first marriage. She did the inking for a lot of that earlier stuff, and she did the backgrounds for the 300 movie. And that just goes so well with his art, and it just fits. And I'm staring at some of the stuff right now, and I could just stare at it all day long.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it's definitely a gritty style of art, to say the least. Sometimes I don't dig it, like the Dark Knight 3 stuff. I'll be honest, I was not a huge fan of. But, you know, kind of looking back at some of the stuff he did for Ronin, of course, Dark Knight Returns, mainly his 80s stuff. It seems like the older he got, the less I enjoyed his art, unfortunately.
I think it all still absolutely screams Frank Miller. You see something he does, and you know that it's Frank Miller. Whether you enjoy it or you don't, you can recognize his imprint on any artwork that he does.
Yep.
And I think that whether or not you enjoy it, you have to respect that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
One of the most iconic Daredevil covers is from Frank Miller, is it not? Daredevil with the Smith & Wesson revolver?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he's guy's definitely had his ups and downs. He directed that Spirit movie, but we're not going to talk about that.
We won't talk about that one. I was actually going to ask, like, we already kind of touched on it a little bit. What do you guys think of some of his works that have been adapted to movies? Because I know, like, the first one that came to mind for whatever reason over Sin City, I think was 300. The first one I thought of was 300. So, what do you guys think about that one?
Well, I think that Sin City is so much an adaptation of something he wrote, something he drew, and something he was on set to oversee. It's that just screams Frank Miller to me. Whereas 300 totally gets the spirit of what he put in, no pun intended, the spirit of what he put in to that book, but visually is its own thing. But I think that 300, the way it's written, is like completely torn directly out of the book. You know, and the way that it looks, yeah, it's like maybe it's a different style, but the book is definitely a storyboard for what they did in that movie. So I think that the adaptation, while it is a little bit more of a departure than Sin City is, it's a fantastic, really great adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if like he had a close working relationship at all. Maybe they had nothing to do with each other. But I don't know if he had that relationship with Zack Snyder. But yeah, this is definitely like the start of Snyder being able to take a comic book panel and basically just slap it right up on the big screen like it was just copy and paste, basically.
Yeah, and say what you want about BVS, that definitely has the same quality where Snyder has like it looks great and really tight spots, so say what you want about it, but quality visual adaptation.
My favorite part about looking things up and digging deeper into this is it looks like he's got some screenplay credits for RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3.
Yeah, he sure does. RoboCop 2.
That's so awesome. And then I'm noticing it looks like they're doing a Sin City TV series. It's showing up on IMDb. It just says announced. I'd be really interested in seeing more about that.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost kind of like the Amazon Lord of the Rings series that's been tossed about and talked about for years and years, where maybe we'll get lucky, like, they're finally producing that Lord of the Rings series. Maybe someone will finally greenlight that Sin City series. But yeah, going back to Sin City, I remember when that came out, and it was mainly done all green screen. Kind of like, I think the only other movies they did that with at the point were the Star Wars movies, because they kind of just invented that whole look. But for me, I think that movie still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I think that movie holds up very well based on its writing and based on the performances more than just the style, because they did the Dame to Kill Me or Dame to Kill For sequel, which had the exact same style. It looked just as good and just wasn't as good a movie. But man, you talk about resurrecting like Mickey Rourke's career, giving Jessica Alba a platform to shake her little hips on. The ensemble cast of Sin City was just phenomenal. I thought that was really, really good. Everybody took it seriously, and everybody felt like they were on the same page production wise. Really killer flick. And it goes back to it's a killer book, man. Well, it's a killer couple of books that Frank Miller wrote and drew, and they did really nothing to alter that material at all. It's very faithfully adapted.
Yeah, and it's just kind of funny because it just hit me. They made sequels to each of these movies, and I kind of forgot they had sequels. Did you guys watch the Sin City or the 300 sequels at all?
I watched both of them. I wish that I didn't.
Oh,
they're not terrible. They're just such a steep fall off from like you were saying about Dark Knight and Dark Knight 2. Yeah. Right. It's just such a steep fall off from the quality of the original that, it's harder to enjoy.
Yeah, I feel like with 300, it wasn't needed. The only thing I remember was Eva Green was in it. That's the only thing I could tell you about it, and I watched the whole movie.
It's about the one-eyed dude, right?
Probably. Like I said, I can't tell you anything else about it because I don't remember it at all. What I do remember, thinking Sin City 2 was all right, but they waited so long to make it that it just wasn't relevant anymore. Agreed. And I think that's where that movie faltered. If it came out within that 3-year window after it, it probably would have been a hit, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you.
So I want to go to the chat and see what they're talking about here, because I know they all have had their thoughts on Frank Miller. Chris Barrett simply says Xerxes. So there you go. Xerxes. You got to love that. One-eyed dude Nick Fury says Ricky Markstad. Okay. We're getting warmer there, I guess. Thunderhouse Design, what's going on, man? He says Rosario Dawson at her best. Yeah, I do agree with that. I like me some Rosario Dawson. Nolan Nerd says Sin City, Benicio del Toro, and Mickey Rourke were the best part of that movie. And you could say that about a lot of those characters, too. Like, I kind of remember liking Bruce Willis and Jessica Alba the best. But, yeah, I mean, everyone was on all cylinders on that movie, in my opinion. And he says that's his favorite one. Chris Barrett says Spawn needs to come back.
Clive Owen was great in that movie, too.
Clive Owen, yeah, absolutely he was.
Whatever happened to Clive Owen?
I don't know.
Apparently,
we got to one day we got to do a retrospective of all the books that have turned into Clive Owen movies.
David Enrique, how's it going, man? He says, I'm glad there's a focus on positive. I was thinking why some greats are judged by their lesser works. Paul McCartney is not judged by his last 4 to 5 albums. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think Frank Miller, he ranks up there with, the Neil Gaimans, the Alan Moores in terms of, his influence, especially on everything you read today. JLS Comics, going the other way, though, says, I could be blind and have no arms and still do a better Wonder Woman cover than that DK3 Wonder Woman. William Bird says, I loved how Claremont changed his writing style to mesh with Miller's pacing and art in the Wolverine limited series. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, still some of his best work, in my opinion. And we got the boy who had 7 in the chat. How's it going, man? All right. So as we kind of start to wrap up the topic here, do you guys have any final thoughts or notes on the career of Frank Miller, or anything you guys think that, the chat out there, the new subscribers should go out and read right now that involves Frank Miller?
let's not forget to mention that Frank Miller resurrected Daredevil. In the early 80s, Daredevil was not a once a month book. It was, I can't recall of how often they were putting it out back then, but it had slowed down substantially. And when they brought Frank Miller on, they were trying some things out. And then if I am looking at this correctly, the person that was on it, O'Neill came in, and when O'Neill came in, he moved Mackenzie to another project so that Miller could try writing the series himself. And after that, within 3 issues, Daredevil came back as a monthly, and the sales soared and soared and soared and soared from there on. So essentially, you're looking at Frank Miller resurrecting Daredevil in the 80s and owned it.
And he also resurrected Batman as well, Dark Knight Returns, too. I don't think he gets near enough credit for that. I think, even like guys like Denny O'Neil and that stuff, they were, kind of, they weren't a dime a dozen back then. They were just kind of like protecting, whatever character they had since the 60s. And, there was this crop of new writers coming in like Frank Miller. They're like, we should really just kind of maybe go back to the roots a little bit, but kind of reinvigorate and reinvent and make it something that feels fresh. And eventually it became an iconic version of each of those characters.
Yeah. And we got to bring this up. Frank Miller created Elektra in that run in Daredevil. Mm-hmm. He created Elektra. That's not something to forget at all.
And she hasn't been as good since he stopped writing her. I think with a guy like Frank Miller, he's cast such a wide net over the industry that he's got great heights and great depths. So his highs are high and his lows are pretty low. When you take those outliers out of the way, though, the middle of his work is still top-notch stuff. Yep. Great storyteller. Great control over how to set a panel up. His sequential art is fantastic. Whether you dig his style or not, or whether you feel it's held up over the years, the guy can tell a story with line work. And man, his impact has exceeded comic books to great movies that everybody in the chat seems to have love for. So you're talking about a guy who, in my mind, is on the level.
So true.
See, there you go. On the level of a Stan Lee, a Jack Kirby, an Alan Moore. He's up there. Does he make the Mount Rushmore? Maybe not, in my opinion, because there's only 4 slots, but he definitely makes the Hall of Fame. So this is a creator that has done so much for modern comic books and the way that modern stories are told, that it would be a shame to exclude him from any accolades that you would want to heap on any creator.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was a comic book Hall of Fame somewhere, I'm sure he would be, one of the first ballot inductees, if you will, into that.
I think he is inducted. I believe there is a comic book Hall of Fame, and I believe he is inducted into it, actually.
That's great. But yeah, earlier Chris Barrett mentioned a fact I should have totally mentioned at the top of the show, that he basically led to the creation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because Eastman and Laird, they're reading Frank Miller and they're trying to come up with an idea, and that's basically where the idea came from for Turtles, is the origin of Daredevil intersplices with the origin of the Turtles in some crazy random world out there somewhere.
Look at the covers. Look at how stark the comparisons. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So, and I do want to say this: if anyone has any ideas on a topic you guys want us to cover in future Modern Men episodes, please don't hesitate to drop it in those future chats. If you guys like this creator spotlight, definitely let us know what creators you want us to highlight in the future. Usually with about 5 to 10 minutes to go in each Modern Men, it's your guys' favorite time. It's that time we pick our next week's read. So usually what we do now is we go to the chat and we get a randomizer out, and then we're going to fill that randomizer with reads you guys want us to talk about next week. So let me go ahead. Actually, I got to do the share screen gimmick here. Let me fire that up. Hopefully my computer doesn't light on fire here while doing this. So hit share.
Mine did.
All right, there we go in Mirror Master mold. All right, so Mr.
Gotta put a Watchman in there, man.
Has the 6th gun.
6 Gun's great.
The Great Legend has phoned in his pick. Watchmen. I see at New X-Men Efrix. Thank you, Chris Evans. That's a phenomenal read.
Hey, man, I've been reading that omnibus. That's the first part of that omnibus.
We'll call it volume 1 because that's the first part. 7 to Eternity.
Yep.
And then we got, is the Annihilation Saga, is that a long one, Drew?
Annihilation, I've read the whole thing, which is like 12 million tie-ins, but the story itself I think is only 8 issues.
Oh, if it's only 8 issues, we'll throw it in there.
It might be 12.
Yeah, Neil
copied
Gaiman's
and
Eternals
pasted.
would be good too.
Yeah.
William.
I want to give some love to some more modern stuff. How about Death of Inhumans?
Ooh.
I spelled Gaiman wrong. See, that's why I don't like this part of the share screen now. Everyone can see how good or bad my spelling is. All right, Drew, what'd you say?
Death of Inhumans.
Okay, Inhumans.
Hey, it's a good book, man.
Not a huge Inhumans guy, but maybe that'll change my mind. I'm gonna interpret. I don't know what Triumph and Torment is, but I'm gonna suggest Spider-Man Torment by Todd McFarlane.
How about we throw some love at DC and we put Dark Knight on there, and we put All-Star Superman on there.
I like it. I like it a lot. Should I put one dud in there? You just reminded me of, Drew.
Yeah. 2 a dud.
All-Star.
Batman and Robin.
Yep.
It never finished.
Or, hey, it's out there.
No,
It
it's not
exists.
over.
Oh God.
It was a
Anyway.
hanging story.
Maybe
You want to really do that to people?
Yes.
I mean, I love it. I'm probably gonna give that a 9.9.
Little ass bar.
Just for the Jim Lee, Dick Grayson costume design.
Let's throw Gideon Falls in there. The first trade
Okay.
paperback of Gideon Falls.
Okay, I like that.
Ooh, have we read Black Hammer? We have not read Black Hammer yet.
No, we read Black
Volume
Hammer.
2. Yeah, we read Black Hammer. We could say Black Hammer Volume 2.
Have you guys read I Hate Fairyland? That's a good one.
Oh,
That's
no, we've
that's
not.
a fun, quick read. Funny. Shows
East
Scotty
of West
Lumsden
makes it in
how young some
again.
love.
Yep, East to West. Yep.
Marvel's 94 for Chris Barrett. Maybe we'll do that.
Blackest Night. Do we? Well, you know,
That's
I'm
a
gonna go.
big one.
I'm gonna go Green Lantern Rebirth first. We gotta start
Okay.
from the beginning on that.
How about Invincible?
Yes.
Trying to look at some
All right.
trades I have. up here,
Astro
get some more
City from
ideas.
JLS. That's a good pick right there.
Descender.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And throw Chew Volume 1 on
Yes. Thank you. Chew. Please keep that every week.
Volume 1. Yeah, we'll read that at some point. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at my wall to see what. You know what? Sandman.
there. You know what's a really
Ooh.
short and sweet one that would be fun to do? The Pro.
Okay. And then while we're at it,
The Boys.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
My fat fingers. Okay. All right. I think we got a list here. So
That's
That seems like a pretty good list.
right there. So
A meaty list. Very meaty.
yeah.
Chris Barrett wants an artist spotlight on Alex Ross, so we'll put that in the
Yeah, we'll put that in the queue. Yeah. we gotta
Ooh,
remember
the
that one.
Luther Strode trilogy,
Luther
Thunderhouse
Strode?
design. That's really good. We'll probably just do Luther Strode Volume 1. Was that the let's just worry about one at a time on that one.
You know, I'm gonna throw one more in there. Why not?
Do it.
We might go back.
Marvel Zombies are. There we go.
Why not? All right. So we're gonna randomize this one time. We'll see what happens here. We got some interesting ones, some wild cards, and some classics. So let's hit it one time. See what we end up
One
with.
time. Just one time.
Woo!
All
Look at
Star
that.
Superman.
Dang, that's one of
Gideon
the
Falls
all-time
in a
best.
close second.
Dang, yeah. Top 3 were All-Star, Gideon Falls, and New X-Men. But nonetheless,
I really.
All-Star Superman wins. That's one of
All right,
my.
guys. Get your
I
S
keep saying
curls
every
ready. Get your red S's. Get your blue cat suits and your red panties. We're gonna go All-Star Superman next week. Get prepared for that.
I'm gonna wear my
Grant
blue
Morrison.
leggings.
Yeah, you got Grant Morrison, Frank Whiteley. Probably, I mean, every time those guys get together, it's like I just want to say it's their best work, but it's their best work. Maybe
Imagine-
I don't know, but it's phenomenal. But yeah, definitely tune in next week for that. I cannot wait for that read for sure. But we'll go into some closing thoughts here. So as we close off, Andy, where can people find you?
People can find me here on the Comic Core Family Network. You know, Monday nights, Friday nights, wherever they need a helping hand. Sometimes we fill in on Tuesdays if they're unable to make it. You know, and my own channel, I'm doing some unboxings and hanging out and helping support other channels. and the Pinkies Out podcast. We just did our last episode a couple weeks ago. We're trying to schedule the next episode. And more importantly, you guys can search the community on YouTube, and I'll be popping up somewhere to hang out with everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely check out ComicManAndy on all those platforms whenever you get the time. DruManchu, where can people find you?
Oh, people can find me Friday nights here on the A Show. They can find nights here on the Best Show, and they can find me hanging out on Thursdays sometimes. I'm all over the Comic Core. Maybe we'll get back to some reviews this week. I got some time on my hands, guys, so you're all going to benefit from that. You also find me hanging out with the Comic Cast over on SNB Network, where I do reviews with Jason Cantu and the Cantu Manchu review crew, and I might show up on their show as well, so keep your eyes peeled. Go over, and if a couple of you guys can go sub them up as well, we can share the love. And thanks everybody for 1,000 subscribers.
Yep,
man, we had a lot of people watching and interacting with this show tonight. A few names that I haven't seen in the chat on a Monday before, and we're really happy about that. We're going to make sure that we keep giving you guys best content possible.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say big thanks to everybody who subbed us up the last couple days. Huge thank you once again to Comics with Bueller, Downright Nerdy Podcast for having Chad on his show. A lot of people today. Metarog shouted us out on the No Faces chat, but congrats to him and John's Comics with Kids once again. Al, Red Sox Comics fan, he's almost there as well, so big congrats to his success in the last couple days. But you can find me. I'm going live tomorrow on my channel at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Ooh,
we're bringing it back. Finally, I'm calling my shot now. I've said a few times I might, maybe. I'm done with the maybes. I'm coming back tomorrow on my CWood 19 channel. It's been too long since I've done anything there, so I will be live there tomorrow. But I want to talk about what you can find here on the Comic Core throughout the week. So if this is your first time subbing up, once again, every single Monday at 10 p.m. you get an episode of Modern Men. Tuesdays you get those golden guys. So if you're not in the modern books and you're watching this for some reason, tune in tomorrow at 10 p.m. For analysis of the golden age from the golden guys. JD, Knights of the Old, and DS Comics will sit there and give you guys some golden age knowledge. Definitely check them out. And if you just want to sit back and have a good laugh, you can watch the greatest comic book show of all time. Whatever.
Second greatest comic. This is the first greatest.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Throwing it out there. All right, I like it, Andy. Throwing out the fire in the first shot. I like it. But you get John's Comics with Kids on there. You get Whitewell Comics, who is one of the funniest people I've ever seen on YouTube. That guy, he's awesome. Bear Island Comics and Gone Too Soon. Comics Misexplained, Jason Cantu. You get that group over there. You will have a good time watching that. And of course, Friday on the Rails, the flagship. It's the mothership, baby. You get the A Show, the show that started it all here on the Comic Core. The Friday is your most must-watch show of the week. Maybe the second most watched, who knows? But whatever. You can catch pretty much all of us on the Friday show. So once again, if you guys are new subscribers, that's your whole lineup for the week. Every day at 10 p.m. Thursday's pending nowadays. We'll see what happens. We'll probably throw something together this Thursday. We'll see. But nonetheless, big thank you guys once again. You all have a wonderful night.